A deadly virus is unleashed upon a small California town, but the real danger might just be the secrecy of military officials with ulterior motives. Dustin Hoffman leads an all-star cast in Outbreak, and after the last few years, let's see how this one holds up. Welcome everyone to the Collector's Cut. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Admiral David.
I'm fine. Keep going.
Quarantine this man. This is the Collector's Cut movie podcast. We get together and we work through movie seasons or filmographies or franchises. We're doing 90s disaster season and shaking things up after a couple of volcanoes and a little tunnel implosion thing.
After some tectonic activity causing some problems.
But yes, we're dealing with Outbreak today, which is, of course, a virus disaster movie, a pandemic disaster movie, if you will. And it's funny, because I hadn't seen this before, and coming to this for the first time post-COVID is a very interesting perspective, I think, to bring to the table here. So we're going to get into it. We'll start spoiler-free, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get into the spoilers. Of course, I'll just remind you, if you are enjoying the show, do hit the like button. It helps us out a bunch, and you can get bonus stuff from me and David over at Patreon. I'll tell you more about that at the end, though. But yeah, Outbreak is kind of what it sounds, although I remember when the real pandemic hit, and there was a lot of like this spiking along with Contagion, which I had seen.
Yes.
And Contagion, I think, well, obviously still different to real life and what was going on, was a lot more comparable. This is a bit different in that it's more about sort of the containment of a town that has an outbreak in it.
Yeah. Contagion is far more of like the bureaucratic side of things and, you know, finding the cure, stuff like that. Whereas this is, at a certain point, an action movie.
Yes. I mean, this movie has a helicopter chase in it, which I was not expecting when I started it, but there is indeed a helicopter chase. So we'll get into how Hollywoodized this one is in comparison. So, yeah, I'll ask. I mean, I assume you hadn't seen this either. Maybe I'm wrong.
I thought I did. I thought I remembered seeing this one, but as we went through it, nah. Like, there's just nothing was there. I know I wasn't confusing it for Contagion, because Contagion I know is wildly different, and obviously it was made much later than this one. But I just could have sworn I watched this one already. Guess not.
Oh, fair enough then. First time for both of us. Because I had seen all the disaster movies we'd done from the 90s up until this point, but this is where we're getting into unknown territory for me.
All right.
And that'll be sticking for next week's movie as well. But David, what did you think of Outbreak?
I liked it in the sense of a 90s disaster movie. I think it hit all the points that I was looking for it to hit, but I think it's kind of, I don't know, it's a problem that I was having with it, especially a lot in the first half, is that all the characters are the stupid ones. Like, there's certain, in these sort of disaster movies, you occasionally get one or two characters that, through their own character flaws, whether it be selfishness, stupidity, whatever, they make the problem worse. And in this movie, everyone except for like two main characters are that kind of character. Everyone makes it worse, to the point where about half an hour into this movie, I just started getting angry. I just started getting annoyed with the movie, that like it almost felt contrived to how stupid people had to be in order to get this thing rolling. Once it got rolling, I mean, at that point, it basically just turns into an action film, and I enjoyed it. It was dumb fun the whole way through. I think it does go a bit too far with what the initial premise was, but it's not a bad one by any means. But the first half, it just kind of got a little bit too contrived for me.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings on this one. I think I kind of agree with the contrivances in the first half. There was one moment in particular that really annoyed me, and I think what especially stuck out to me about it was that, having lived through a pandemic, you don't really need to contrive things to say that this is spreading. There doesn't have to be like a dumb movie moment that sort of results in it spreading further. It can happen relatively naturally, but they go out of their way to be, oh no, this accident moment happens, and that's why it keeps spreading. And like, we don't need this. We really don't. But obviously, they felt that they did at the time. I had that problem. I think the characters, for the most part, are a bit. They're a bit off. Like, so our lead character is Dustin Hoffman, and I thought his character was kind of all over the place tonally for me. There was times when it felt like he was lighthearted when he shouldn't have been lighthearted. There was times when there was little jokes that just didn't feel right to me. I can never feel like I was getting the serious side of what this character was supposed to be. It felt like it was a weird mishmash of like a generic Hollywood thriller leading man, but also the leading man from a lighthearted adventure movie. And they kind of never mash those two things together. And, you know, so there's just lots of little moments where there's like, oh, this is what we get for terms of character building, but it's all kind of light. And to be honest, most of the characters do feel pretty one note to me. I didn't really latch on to anyone, or the fact that his marriage is over and we're supposed to care about them still caring about each other. I never felt any of that. So I think that's the problem. And then the other big problem I had is that this movie was ready to be over about 30 minutes before it ended.
Oh, yeah.
And there was just so much extra stuff tacked on to give it more suspenseful, thrilling action sequences. And I'm like, this is over. Like, I felt like it was ready to be done. The plot reason's there for it to be done. And you just have basically, for lack of a better term, a villain making up more problems for everyone that has to be dealt with. And that's what the last 25, 30 minutes is. And that just felt like extraneous to me. And I'm like, I was ready to be done. This movie's like just over 2 hours long. It did not need to be that long.
No, I fully agree. That's kind of what I was getting of once it hits the action points at the end, is that it goes just that extra little bit too far of it just seems crazy how far it got when we started with some scientists in a lab studying a virus. Like, it gets so far out into right field that it feels like they were just, honestly, to me, it felt like studio notes. It felt to me like they shot an original thing and then the studio came back saying like, if we give you an extra $100,000, can you throw in a helicopter chase scene?
First of all, that's cute that you think that would only be $100,000.
I know.
No, I don't think this feels like it's been changed at all. This feels like this is just what it always was. This is a generic Hollywood script of, like the first thing I said about this movie is how Hollywoodized it is, and that's what this is. It is full-on 90s Hollywood movie that happens to just have an outbreak as the central plot. But this is not a movie that's seriously trying to do a good nuanced take on a virus, or something that feels a bit more, I don't even say docudrama, but something just more grounded that's actually trying to explore the real decisions that would be made. No, this is about having helicopter chases, right? That's what this movie is. It's about having helicopter chases, about having a villain that has to be stopped. It's about the race against the clock. It's all the generic Hollywood things that just happens to surround. And it does have the disaster movie tropes. Like, it has that thing where the main character believes there's a serious threat, but no one believes the volcano's going to erupt. And he keeps... But the annoying thing is, though, is that despite the fact that I have lived through a pandemic, and I want to be on the side of the person saying there's a problem, I also can't deny for all the other characters that Dustin Hoffman just keeps saying, I have no science to back it up, I just have a gut feeling. And to be honest, I can't blame them for not taking him that seriously. He's just right.
That's also where the issue of how contrived the first half is comes into play. Because if it were a sort of thing of like, we see how easily transmissible it is, or we see like, you know, how they're just overlooking certain things that are super obvious, I'd be like, yeah, no, believe Dustin Hoffman. But the fact that like at one point in this transmission thing, there is exactly one dude who has this and is like out in public able to spread it, and his plot of A, how he got it, and B, how he spreads it, feels so absolutely contrived that it doesn't make any sense that anyone would have thought that this was still going on. So when they say like, no, Dustin Hoffman, you're crazy, I'm like, yeah, he totally is. He has nothing to base this on except that he can see the runtime of the movie and he knows that this isn't going to end in 10 minutes.
We're still in Act 1. There's going to be an outbreak, damn it. It's the name of the movie.
Absolutely.
It's going to happen. It feels like he's read the script and that's why he knows, and that's the only reason he could possibly know. So yeah, we'll get into all the more ins and outs of the plot and like how things progress when we get into spoilers. Cast-wise, obviously we've mentioned Dustin Hoffman. He's our main guy. He's not CDC. The CDC does come up. It's a major part of the movie. But he's basically the military in-house version of the CDC.
Yeah, it's they've got their own little virology lab, and I think there were different like levels of it, of like BL1, BL2. He's BL4, which is like the worst of the worst stuff.
Yeah, so he's doing the same kind of thing that the CDC do. In fact, his ex-wife, played by Rene Russo, is divorcing him, and she's going to work for the CDC because it's in the same field, because that's what she's skilled for, but she doesn't want to work with a husband anymore. So they're basically doing the same type of job. They're just doing it in different sectors. But so she's there. Morgan Freeman plays Dustin Hoffman's boss. He's in charge of his division, so he's given the orders. His assistant is played by Kevin Spacey, so everyone's excited for that.
That's a strange word to use for it.
I didn't know he was in this, and the credits were coming up at the start of the movie, and it said Kevin Spacey's like the fifth name or whatever it was, and I went, "Oh, okay, that was a surprise."
Yeah, I mean, when was this? This was 95, and then 7 was
95, also
95. So I'm curious which one came out first here.
Cuba Gooding Jr. is there, also as part of Dustin Hoffman's team. He's a pilot, a helicopter pilot, so that comes into play as well. As I mentioned, there's a helicopter chase, so
yeah,
be ready for that.
He's also almost the audience avatar. He's the new guy to the team, so he's like the one that they explain everything to, and he's the one who hasn't been as grizzled and isn't as stone-faced in the face of all this disease and how it kills people.
Yeah, pretty much. And then Donald Sutherland shows up. He is like a high-up general, so he's like Morgan Freeman's boss. So
I think they're at the same level. I think they're like at the, because they both have general as their title, so I think they're both at like the same level of the military.
Okay, well, he still was calling shots, I guess.
Oh yeah. It's definitely a matter of like who's in charge of the divisions here, and like someone has to actually be in charge of certain sections of the military.
And then also worth mentioning, Patrick Dempsey has a role in here as well. So I only really know him from Scream 3. I know that sounds strange to people because he was on like a TV show for like a decade, but
that's Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah, but I know him from Scream 3, which is the shit Scream movie, and he's shit in it. So I was delighted to see him.
Honestly, I never watched Grey's Anatomy either, so I only know him just by cultural. Patrick Dempsey is a name. Like, I don't actually know him from anything, really.
I thought you were going to say cultural osmosis, but you went really specific.
Yeah, because it's not even cultural osmosis. Osmosis would imply that, like, I know what he's from, but I don't. I'm looking through his list here, and I've seen stuff he's in, but I don't even remember his roles.
Yeah, that's fair. And that's pretty much all the notable cast. No one else kind of stuck out to me. That's everyone we're really going to be dealing with.
Oh, yeah, we did mention Rene Russo by name, didn't we? Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, nobody else here is really doing anything. I will give one shout out, as long as we're here in the cast section, because it was actually uncredited, but it was the best performance in the movie, hands down. It's a one-scene wonder. It is the President's Chief of Staff.
Oh, right, okay.
This guy, his name is J.T. Walsh. He's uncredited in this movie, which is a damn shame.
How is he uncredited? He's got a whole monologue.
That's what I was wondering, but no, he's listed as uncredited here. But
Doctor Number 3's got a credit, but this guy's got a monologue and doesn't get one.
Nope. And it was the best performance in the movie. It gave more emotion than any of the other characters combined.
Yeah, that scene does very much stand alone in a lot of ways, but we'll get to it in the spoilies. It's weird to say that we have to talk about anything like this, but yeah, there's helicopter chases, there's explosions, so there is effects. They're all pretty fine. Like, they're kind of stuff that movies could do in this time period. You know, it's nothing. This is not like an entire town falling apart like Dante's Peak, where there's a lot of miniatures and things like that. Yeah,
there was one sequence where they do the thing where they show like a character coughing, and then we follow like the air particles, like the moisture on his breath around the room. That definitely stood out as like they were pushing the limits as to what was actually feasible with what they were doing. It wasn't awful, but it was noticeable how it just barely snuck in under the uncanny valley.
What's funny is that there's two shots in the movie like that. There's that one, which is just like we're following the particles after he coughs in the movie theater. And it was like, okay, that's fine. I get the point of this. It's sort of, you know, it's there to really just show how they can move around and infect other people. Fine. The one that bothered me though is there's a shot that goes through like an air vent and goes through the duct and comes out the other side, and that's the 1995 CG that gave me a quiver. I was like, oh god, no, that was my eyeballs did not like that.
Which is weird because it's literally unmoving sheet metal. Like, you should just be able to take a picture of sheet metal and you get it. Like, I don't understand why it looked weird.
Because well, I mean, what you just said is not true, because the lighting changes as you're moving through it, so you can't just take a photo. It's
I guess it was lighting.
That would look even more unnatural. The particles work because ultimately they're so minuscule that you get away with them looking like just little CG blobs. Because like, hey, if you looked at them under a microscope, that might be how they look. We don't know. We've never seen them, but we know what metal looks like. We all are familiar with what metal looks like, so it sticks out if it looks unnatural.
I mean, I guess my other issue with it is, like, yes, they made it a CGI sequence, but this isn't something that's, like, unfilmable in real life. You can just shove a camera into a vent and get the same effect. Sure, you can't, like, snake it the same way through, but surely they could have filmed some reference footage and, like, gotten a lot closer than they did.
Like, this was new tech. This was the same year the Power Rangers movie came out. I remember the CG of the Zords and that, and that was pretty dire, so... We're at a really rough transition point here for effects in Hollywood.
I hope this didn't have the same budget as the Power Rangers movie.
It probably had more, but this cast, you kidding me? The cast alone probably cost more than that Power Rangers movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
no, there's nothing nothing really stands out without spoiling, because honestly, the biggest issue with the movie is how it begins at such a, I would almost say small, but such a, like, personal level, and then by the end of the movie it develops into such an action hero routine that it's unbelievable they're even part of the same movie.
Honestly, my big thing towards, by the time we get to the end and I sort of seen the whole picture more or less of what the movie was, all I could think about was how much better Cassandra Crossing was at doing the same kind of idea. It's about a virus, and the big thing that movie did was that it kind of became less about the virus itself and more about like the cost of human life and like the decisions to either like save or abandon people. And that does kind of come into this movie. It absolutely does. But the way it handles it in this, it's like, no, there's a villain and like it's countdowns to explosions and it's stuff like that. Cassandra Crossing was so much more effective and was felt like it was really saying something about the topics, whereas here it just kind of feels like, no, this is a popcorn blockbuster that's out in the summer of 95 and they hope they'll make some money on it and that's it. Like, that's all this is.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. It is absolutely. It fits the season. Like, you would think as we go through the list of things coming out this season with volcanoes and twisters and whatnot, that a little film about an outbreak would be the odd one out. But honestly, it fits in more than you would expect. Yeah,
it feels like it's structured like one of those movies. It feels like the way the military comes in and quarantines the town feels like, oh, this is the moment, this is the disaster's starting, and they're trying to like, like everything about it does feel structured like a disaster movie.
You got the balance between like, oh, the human need for freedom, and then the cause for the better good, and how they fight against each other, and like it's everything you've ever seen throughout any like Towering Inferno immediately comes to mind as like people who are so selfish trying to get themselves out that they put everyone else at risk.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. Obviously, there's like I said, the main guy is convinced it's about to happen, but no one believes him, and then it happens.
Yeah. Also, the very fact that there is such a cut and dry villain to this movie really pisses me off. Like, we can't just have the virus be the villain. Donald Sutherland is the villain. Like, absolutely 100%. And to the point where the movie doesn't even pretend like he had any ground to stand on either. They just out and out say like, yeah, no, he's a dick, and we'll see how he deals with that.
Yeah, the movie potentially could have been a lot more interesting if there was a reasonable argument he had for his point of view. And that's kind of what Morgan Freeman's there for, is he's kind of the balanced one where he kind of agrees with doing a lot of the things that the military or Donald Sutherland wants to do, but only to the point where it makes sense. And once there's a point where it doesn't make sense anymore, he's quite happy to say, no, that's not right. Whereas Donald Sutherland is like, no, everything I always planned is exactly what we're still going to do, regardless of whatever new information has come into light. Like, it just, it's very one note. I didn't really get a whole lot out of him. He's got like a running thing as well with this other guy in the military who he just makes fun of this guy and says, oh, you'll never be a general. You're a pipsqueak. And
he says the line, he's just like, oh, well, it looks like you finally came through. I bet you're hoping for a promotion one day, huh? And he's like, yes, sir. And he's like, well, you're never going to get it. I'm like, that's needlessly mean. I have no idea why you would just crush this man's dreams in front of him for no reason.
Yeah, he's just a prick. There's like nothing
Yeah.
else to it. So we'll get into spoilers then, because I don't really think there's much more to really talk about. Spoiler free. So spoilers for Outbreak. You have been warned. It's a monkey. A monkey did it.
Yep.
A monkey spreads the virus
It was a
around.
monkey. Not just a monkey from a small, like, African village. Of course it was. It couldn't come from anywhere else.
Yeah. It does, like, it does have a little tinge of that. Like, every time they name the virus, they have to put the word African in front of it, and it does feel a little bit like we're doing something from a far land that's outside America is coming to, like, causes all problems. I don't know, I wouldn't say there's anything overtly problematic. It just feels the way they keep emphasizing it feels like it's definitely of a time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, without saying much about it, it's the same sort of way that, like, certain people were calling COVID by different names.
Yes.
And it's just in this movie, it just feels like nobody thought about it. Whereas it's obviously modern day, it's more intentional to get a certain reaction out of people.
Yeah, and maybe this is part of the perspective of having lived through an actual pandemic is coming in a little bit. The movie opens with a flashback to the 60s, during Vietnam, maybe. No, it can't be, because it's in Africa.
It was 67, so it might have been around. It was during Vietnam times.
Yeah, that time, yeah. Well, this is the thing. I think when it came up with the year, I assumed it was Vietnam until we started seeing, the village and stuff. And I'm like, oh, no, it's not. But, like, that was my first instinct, is that this must be Vietnam, but it wasn't.
Sorry, I'm just looking real quick. It looks like there was a thing called the Congo Crisis, which
so that's why
might have been what that was.
Because obviously that was the other thing. The American military's there, and I'm like, okay, it must be Vietnam because they're here. But yeah, okay, so basically there's a virus outbreak in this small village, and a couple of American hazmat suits come in, and we don't see their faces. I think it's maybe implied that this is meant to be young Sutherland and Freeman, maybe, possibly.
Maybe.
Either way, it doesn't really matter, but they assess the fact that there's a bunch of people in the village are dead. They're all pretty much dead. The doctor's like, it's not airborne, whatever. And they say they're going to bring in an airlift. And the point of this opening scene, though, is that instead of sending in help, instead they send a plane that just drops a bomb and kills whoever's left in the village, right? Everyone who was waiting to hopefully come out, and the off chance that they might be infected, they just kill everyone to incinerate the virus. And that's it. And then it cuts to present day, and we get a rather long opening title sequence, actually, of the camera going around like the building that Dustin Hoffman works in. It's sort of going around and just sort of seeing the sights as the titles are coming up.
Here, hold on. I got an actual thing. It's the USAMRIID.
I wonder why I didn't remember that. It's so easy and rolls off the tongue.
It's the U.S. Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases.
Is this a real thing, or is it something the movie made up?
It seems real. It's got a wiki page.
Oh, fair enough.
It's real. Yeah.
I mean, the CDC is obviously real, so it doesn't make sense that this could also be real. But sometimes because they don't want to mix up like people with like maybe there could be legal ramifications if they represent themselves as a thing in the real world. They sometimes just make up their own. But fair enough. If it's based on a real part of the military, then fair enough. So we get sort of the introduction to the characters is quite simple. Dustin Hoffman's going on a mission, right, to see a virus outbreak. Again, it's in Africa, and through this introduction we get him saying hello. We see that he's friends with Morgan Freeman, even though he's his boss, because they kind of have a bit of banter. We see that Kevin Spacey's character works for him, and we're introduced to Cuba Gooding Jr., who is clearly kind of young and fresh out of like military school, because he's being very proper and saluting and like being very rigid and doesn't joke along with anyone. And Dustin Hoffman has to sort of sit down with them and kind of try and loosen him up a bit and get him ready for what he's about to see.
They basically just tell him, like, look, we get it. You read all the books. Like, you're prepared mentally or, like, with knowledge. But it's a different thing to go in there and actually see these diseases and the dead bodies in person. That's something that you need to know, that if you freak out, you're going to cause problems for everybody. So don't freak out.
Yeah, and I think it's actually before they go on this mission, there's a quick moment where him and his wife are both in hazmat suits in the building, and he just kind of says, oh, this is your last day, right? And then the next scene is like they're at like his place, and he's like looking after his dogs, and he ends up having to take his dogs to the ex-wife because he has to go on this mission, and we find out that they were married, that they're not in a good place. Honestly, like this relationship never did anything for me the entire movie.
It's such a weird thing because it's obviously in place to give him someone to care about, but like not to the point where we want him to not be just like a single dude who's ready to walk into the face of danger without worrying about anything. So the ex-wife that he still kind of has feelings for is how they try to split that difference. So he can go into these dangerous situations without having someone care about him, but he still has someone to care about as well.
Yeah, obviously it's to give the back half of the movie for him to have someone that he's trying to save a bit on a more personal level, which is fine. But like he could have just cared about a colleague or something. Yeah. Like the entire marriage just feels like it almost just feels like it doesn't belong. And if nothing else, they have no chemistry. I never bought it for a second. Like even the little like couple of lines that he drops on his way out as he's leaving the dogs with her, I'm just like, I feel like Dustin Hoffman's just kind of phoning it in. And this is not to diss on Dustin Hoffman, but it just feels like he's doing Dustin Hoffman 101. Everything feels kind of light, no matter how tense things. Yeah, he's got a few scenes later where he'll yell at Morgan Freeman or something about what's right and stuff, but there's so much of this movie where he's just sort of being charming Dustin Hoffman, and it just doesn't feel like it quite fits in the scene.
Yeah, I agree. Especially when it comes down to their relationship, is you get that there's supposed to be this tension between them, and there's supposed to be this thing of like, we both want this to work, but it just never did. And even when they are angry at each other, even when they're shouting at each other, I still don't feel like they're angry at each other. Like there's nothing existing in this relationship to the point where the final line is them, I guess, getting back together.
Possibly.
And
maybe.
I had to like rewind it and listen to that scene 3 times because I wasn't sure what the hell they were getting at, because it felt like it just felt like a doctor visiting a patient. It was so clinical and sterile the entire time.
I think what's even worse is that when there was ever moments where she was getting angry at him over the phone early on specifically, is that like it felt like he wasn't like affected by anything. The most he ever gets affected by anything in terms of being angry at her and feeling like it's like a two-way street is when he throws down the photographs in that first scene with her, because she's like packed up some of his stuff and he's like, oh, you're giving me all the photos of us, and she's like, yeah, I don't want them, and he sort of throws them down and he goes, well, I don't want them either, and he storms out. And it's the only time he ever feels like he's angry at her. Every other time he interacts with her, it feels like he's always just speaking softly, or he's trying to reason with her and get, I don't know, like...
I mean, it doesn't help that there's no other talk about their relationship throughout the movie. It's anytime they interact, it's about this virus. It's about this bug. There's no other time where they stop and say like, hey, remember when we visited your mom's house back at Christmas or something? Like, there's no personality there. It's all about the virus.
Yeah, or even... like something you could have done is that obviously Donald Sutherland and the higher ups don't want Dustin Hoffman on the case, right? And that's something that's there for kind of all the movies, one way or another. But certainly early on, there's a lot of trying to keep him from what's going on. And something they could have done at a certain point, because Rene Russo goes in as part of the CDC, is have her like turn around and say, no, you know what? My ex-husband is the goddamn best at this. We need him here. I don't care what your orders are. Get him here now. Like if she like went out, put her neck out to vouch for him and say, no, we need him. One, it would have sold his abilities a bit, right? I don't know if we needed that, but it would have done something. And certainly I think it would have been this idea of like, okay, we see that she doesn't really want to be around him on a personal level, but she's saying that things are so bad that it doesn't matter. I'll be around my ex-husband because this is how serious this is and we need to deal with this. It may have helped sell that a little bit and shown some reluctance on her end, but her making that decision would be like a bridge. Instead, when he shows up at the crime scene, as it were, and she's like relieved to see him, it just kind of feels like, oh, you're just instantly relieved, which I guess could tell us something that she does think that about him, but it just kind of feels like it wasn't built up enough. It didn't feel like, oh, she knows he's defying things. Yeah, she does say, hey, I heard you get sent to some other city for something else, and he's like, I did, and she just kind of smiles, and I'm like, that's fine enough as a moment, but it just felt like, I don't know, I feel like Dustin Hoffman gets away with just being sneaky about how he betrays orders the whole movie, to the point where I never felt any weight when he does. Like, there should be some stuff in the second half where he's really defying orders by stealing a helicopter. And I'm like, but earlier on, he already lied to some dude to redirect the plane, and there was like no consequences from it. It was just kind of hand waved, like when it came up after that.
They specifically had Morgan Freeman be like, okay, he redirected that flight to get here. Go out and arrest him. And then he just shows up and they're like, cool, arrest him, he's here. And then all he has to do is say like 3 words about how the virus has gotten worse. And he's just like, oh, okay, we'll just forget all about that then. No big deal.
Yeah.
Like, you're right. There's no penalties to Dustin Hoffman being this sort of rule-breaking dude because, god damn it, he gets results.
Yeah, that's it. It's that trope. But anyway, so yeah, that was just to kind of complain about their lack of chemistry and never giving a shit about their thing. So they go on the plane, right, his team, to this village, and there's this outbreak, and there's a whole panicky moment because when Cuba Gooding Jr. sees one of the dead bodies, and they see a kid who's sick crying about his dead parent, he starts vomiting inside his hazmat suit, and he tries to take off his helmet, and the others are like, no, don't do that, you idiot, don't do that. But he does it anyway. But luckily for him, the virus is not airborne, right? A doctor walks in and says, don't worry, it's not airborne, it's fine. And they look through it. And
I appreciate the fact that they have a doctor specifically come in and say that, but I also question the fact that they just take him at his word. That they're just like, oh, it's not airborne? Sweet. Because the very next scene, they're all without their helmets and are just like walking around.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is what it is. Like, they wanted the helmets off because we got actors, we want to see them. I think that
absolutely.
That's it. That's the reason for it. But basically, they're like, okay, this thing kills quick. You're dead within 24 hours. We don't really know what the incubation period's like, how long you're contagious, so on and so on. And Dustin Hoffman is concerned, and we very quickly cut to him at a party where Morgan Freeman is, and he's trying to tell him, hey, I want to put an alert. Let's put an alert to everyone that this thing could possibly come to the country. And to be honest, I think Morgan Freeman's got a pretty good argument. He's like, look, this was in a very centralized village that was far from civilization. It was too far for anyone to get to on foot. So anyone who did leave would just be dead in the jungle now. This thing kills so quick that that's actually a good thing because it means that they're not alive long enough to infect anyone. And especially, obviously if it's in a city, it's a different story because you're surrounded by people. But in this context, that's actually kind of a, like, they got off easy almost. Like, it can't spread to anyone because it kills too quick.
That was an entire sequence in Contagion that I always loved because it just explains, like, look, there's a sweet spot where if it hangs out your body for too long and then kills you, then everyone dies. But if it kills you real quick, then it just burns itself out. No big problem. Like, it's something you don't even need to worry about.
But of course, Dustin Hoffman's convinced it's going to happen, and he tries to tell his wife, who's now at the CDC, like, hey, tell him to put an alert out. I've got a gut feeling. And she's like, I can't put out an alert because of your gut feeling, husband. Yep. That's not how this works.
Right in the middle of all that, like, as soon as Morgan Freeman says, like, look, we have nothing to worry about. It's never going to get to America. Smash cut to ship crossing the ocean and a man feeding one of these small monkeys that we've seen throughout the jungles. Yeah, we saw
him get captured. We saw like a cage come down and capture this monkey. Yep. And I don't think the implication, obviously, is that this monkey's been alive since the 60s. Probably it's been passed down. But he's the carrier. He's patient zero. He's immune to it, but he's the one spreading it. So throughout the first half, and we'll just sort of tackle this all together here because it's one running subplot, is that he is smuggled on a ship, which is it Korean? What's it? Is that Korean ship?
I believe so.
There was a flag. That's why I thought it was Korean, because there was a flag in the bunk area. But basically this shipmate has this monkey, he's feeding the banana and stuff, and then at the port, there's like an animal place, but this isn't going through the proper channels. It's not an official piece of itinerary. It instead goes to Patrick Dempsey's character, who's stealing it, and pays off the guard on the way out, say, hey, hush, this is just between me and you, here's some money. And he's like, yeah, sure, buddy. So he's basically just found this monkey for a local pet shop that's looking for a monkey to sell to some people. But the pet shop owner's like, no, we're looking for a boy, this is a girl, this is useless. But of course, as this is all happening, a couple of different things of note occur. One, the monkey scratches the pet shop owner. And two, when the monkey's in the car with Patrick Dempsey, it spits water in his face. So it's like, okay, this is two potential spreaders.
Like, both of these, I want to make clear, I'm fine with. I don't think that these are contrived. I think that this is, you got a monkey. It spreads around the disease a little bit. This is totally fine by me in terms of spreading the virus.
So it kind of split us in two here because we've got two paths to go. So we'll follow Patrick Dempsey first. That
his just wraps up like immediately, I think.
It's pretty quick, yeah. He takes the monkey to a forest and lets it go. He feels a bit guilty because the monkey looks back at him all like, really? You're leaving me? And tries to run back in the cage. And he's like, no, I can't take you with me. I'm going on a plane. You have to go be in the wildlife and stuff. Yeah. It's like, okay, fine. Monkey's in the forest. Next time we see him, he's on a plane and he already looks sick. And all I could think was, he's on a plane. No, this is a terrible, terrible bit of news.
And strangely enough, it doesn't matter. Like, nobody got sick on the plane.
No, well, that's the thing, though. They can't, because as we find out later, this strain is not airborne. Right? He's actually he's not contagious to anyone as long as he doesn't like touch or interact. There's a whole horror movie moment where he's taking a bite out of a cookie, but he's too sick to keep eating it, so he puts it down the tray next to him. And this kid walks past and sees the cookie, and he's like, "Mister, are you going to finish that cookie?" And the implication is that if he takes a bite of that cookie, he's getting infected. There's some saliva on that bad boy. This is going to spread. And quite rightly, this boy's mother jumps in and says, "No, leave the man alone. Do not eat the cookie. He looks like he's dying. Come back to your seat, my child."
I mean, even if he didn't look like he was dying, Patrick Dempsey's character is, a criminal who steals animals from a biological lab. He doesn't look like a cool dude to begin with. He doesn't look like he's like someone you want your kid being around.
I mean, that's fair enough, but I think more pertinent in the scene is the fact that he looks like he's dying.
Yeah, that too.
It's a pretty bad sign. I wouldn't be accepting food off of him. So he lands at the airport. He comes out. He looks even worse. His girlfriend's there to greet him, and she's like, "Oh, you look terrible. Let's make out." And they make out in the airport.
That was my first little half contrivance. I was like, all right, I can believe that they have a sort of like passionate enough relationship that she was going to make out with him no matter what. But if I saw Patrick Dempsey walking out looking like that, I would seriously reconsider in her position.
Yeah, like, it's not that weird for a couple to like go, "Oh, you've got a cold. I'm not going to kiss you for a couple of days." Like, that's not that strange of an occurrence.
It's not that he doesn't have a cold. He is like his eyes are puffy red. He is starting to get like lesions on his skin.
Oh yeah,
he's definitely not okay.
I'm saying it's normal to avoid a kiss for something later, which is just because you don't want to catch it. But this is this is like at least a very severe flu at the very least.
He may as well have come out with like a full nosebleed, and he's like, "Oh, no problem, just get in here with tongue."
So he collapses, and then next we see them. They're at the hospital because at this point the CDC's found out, and Rene Russo comes in and checks him out, and she's like, "Hey, have you been around any animals?" But he's too sick at this point to answer, so he just dies. And the girlfriend's like dying in the next bed, and she can still talk, but she's just crying her eyes out because her boyfriend has just died.
Yeah.
But
plus she doesn't know anything to begin with.
And she doesn't know. No, she doesn't. But this is the thing: is the movie gets like a false like, "Oh, we've caught another break because it's just these two. No one. We've checked everyone that was on the plane. None of them are infected. They all start cheering the CDC. They're about to break out the champagne, and
they throw their papers in the air. I'm like, you might want to get those guys.
And that's when they get the facts about the other city. Because you see, dear viewer, if we go back in time to the pet store owner, right? So keep in mind, this guy traveled to Boston from this small town in California. So we go back to the small town in California where the pet shop owner was, right? He went in to get checked up at the hospital. They took his blood, and they're like, "Oh, we're going to look at it. It's fine, whatever." Here's the contrived part that really upset me, David.
Yes, me too. This is the worst.
Right? So, this guy, this doctor, right? Not the one that was treating him, but there's like a doctor who's doing the blood tests, right? And he's got the little machine that spins the test tubes around, and he's got it, right? Somehow, he like sticks his hand in it, and it just makes all the test tubes explode. So he gets like a spurt of blood. So not just this guy's blood, whatever else was in there. He gets just like a face of random different patients' blood who have all got something because that's why they're being tested. Well, they may not have, but they at least might have something. That's why they're being tested. Yeah,
I mean, he does make the concerted effort because he goes and immediately talks to the doctor. He's like, "What if I have like HIV now? What the hell am I supposed to do about that?"
Yeah, he's very concerned. And there's a little joke here as well. He's like, hey, like, I don't want to give in to my girlfriend. And the doctor goes, some flowers occasionally might be nice. I'm like, oh, very good movie. That was a hoot.
Yeah.
I'm very pleased with that joke.
Very good. Quick question. Do you have any sort of procedure here at this hospital, for God's sakes?
Right. So this just felt so annoying to me because I'm like, we've lived through it, and they didn't at the time, right? I mean, obviously there's been pandemics in the past. They bring up the 1918 one, but like, you know, there's been things, but we lived through a pandemic and it spread so easily that you don't need to give me some contrived thing. The thing in the movie, because this guy goes on a date with his girlfriend to the movies, and that's where you get the shot where the particles from his cough go through the theater and go into other people's mouths and stuff. And I had no problem. It's a bit over the top from like a presentation standpoint, but the idea that he's just coughing and the particles are going around and infecting people is fine, because that's just how it would normally spread. That's not contrived.
I agree, but I think that this scene also kind of bothered me because, okay, let's assume the disease set in super fast. When he was going to the movies, he was okay, and then it just set in during the movie. We can assume that. My problem is this guy is sick as hell, and he's doing the whole, like, muscling his way through the crowd at the concession stand. I'm like, bro.
And he's coughing in people out there too.
At that point, you're just being a dick, just to spread the virus.
Yeah, I think... Now... Maybe they felt they had to do this. Maybe the justification for why it's mutated and went airborne is that it mixed in with all this other blood when this guy got infected. Because the guy who went to Boston, right, and died with his girlfriend, they had the type that wasn't airborne, right? They both died. They tested them. And the theory that Kevin Spacey comes up with later is that the carrier, the patient zero, who turns out to be the monkey, is that's carrying both versions of the virus, right? I don't know how realistic that is. That sounds... whatever, I don't know.
Yeah, it works in the context of the movie. I'm willing to accept it to that extent.
Yeah, but maybe the idea is that because their virus came from the monkey spitting on them, but the pet shop owner who spreads the airborne version got scratched. Maybe that's like the justification for how they transmitted differently.
All right, so in context of what you're saying, yes, that's probably the reason they want to go with. But then that doesn't make any sense as to why it has to be airborne rather than like by touch. My idea here is to, from a meta perspective as to why, is because halfway through the movie, we get the reveal that, 1967 happened and that this virus did not just randomly show up. The military was aware of it. And the only way to do that, I feel like, is to have them show up and cure one of the viruses. And of course, they cure the non-aerosolized one. They cure the original one, which I get from a storytelling perspective, but like it's kind of just obnoxious because it feels so Hollywoodized again, you know?
Just to clarify what you just said there, they don't show up and cure it. They already had a cure for the original version, because the one they encountered in the 60s was the non-airborne one, and they had an antibody or whatever just sitting there for that in a tank. And Morgan Freeman went to this vault and looked at it and was even saying to Donald Sutherland on the phone, hey, we can throw this town a lifeline. Like, can we not use this? And he's like, no. Keep it all secret. And the motivation for keeping it all secret, of course, is because Donald Sutherland is the evil military man who wants to keep this all secret so that he can eventually use it as a biological weapon if the day ever arises. And they've got the secret antibodies, so therefore they can use it. Although the fact that there's like a new mutated version that's airborne that they can't cure kind of throws all that away anyway. Like, you can't do anything with this.
If there's one thing that I think that these movies, like this style of thing, doesn't get about viruses, is exactly what we learned is that, COVID exists. Great, cool, awesome. But like the different strains, the different ways that it like mutates and changes. And it happens very quickly through something that is very... easily spread.
Transmissible.
Transmissible. That's what I was looking for. So the fact that this guy thought, oh yeah, we'll just douse an entire country with that, but don't worry, we'll have the cure on our side. There's no way it's ever going to change at all over the 50 years since we got it.
Yeah, that was a real oversight, I think, on his part. Yeah. Maybe it just reeks of the writers doing a little bit of research, but not enough research.
Honestly, but I mean, by the time you get to the end of the movie, they should already realize they don't have a cure for this one anymore. So it doesn't even matter if it's kept secret. Like, they've already let the cure out for the one they can cure. Why is it such a big deal that they keep everything secret still?
Because then they have to admit that they had a cure and didn't release it.
Yes, that's what the movie says, but like I don't agree. I don't feel like that's a good enough reason.
So Morgan Freeman's constantly guilty about this, and that's why he's kind of the sympathetic one of the two. Whereas Donald Sutherland's like, no, we should just probably bomb the town eventually, and that's what he's trying to do for the entire back half of the movie. So like I say, so this doctor at the movie theater spreads the virus, he ends up sick, and then the facts about all the people he's infected in this small town in Northern California gets to the CDC right after they start celebrating about the virus being contained, and they're like, shit. So this small town ends up getting quarantined by the military, and this is where Dustin Hoffman, even though he's told to go to a different city, like even though he wants to go and be involved in this, Morgan Freeman's like, no, I'm your boss, you're going to go where I tell you. So you're going to go to New Mexico, and Dustin Hoffman just lies to the guy who's like doing the flight plans and is like, hey, did you not get the orders? Yeah, we're changing course, we're going here, blah blah blah. It's the whole thing.
Because of what the end result ended up being, where Morgan Freeman comes in and says like, oh, he disobeyed orders, go out and arrest him. I get the sequence you're saying there, but in the moment, I genuinely could not tell whether or not Morgan Freeman was doing like the wink wink thing and kind of like giving him permission to do what he did.
I don't think he did, because he does a wink wink thing like that later, which is more like clear. And I don't think they were trying to do that here. I think he was just disobeying the order here.
Yeah, but like I couldn't tell that up until he said, oh, go out and arrest Dustin Hoffman. He broke my orders. I was like, oh, okay. So he wasn't supposed to do that. Got it. And it comes down to the fact that as he tells this helicopter or this plane guy to change the flights, he does it in that Dustin Hoffman way. He does it very loosey-goosey. It doesn't feel like he's worried about getting in any sort of trouble. It feels like he has all the permission he needs to do this.
It feels like the same Dustin Hoffman from like Meet the Fockers. Like it just feels like he's in a comedy for a minute. The tone feels just all over the place. So the town gets quarantined, right? And I will just talk about this a little bit separately because it's kind of standalone. But they do a whole thing early on when it's quarantined and the town's getting worried and they're all out in the streets, and Hoffman, Rene, Russo, all of these teams, they're all walking about in hazmat suits. The military are all wearing gas masks, so on and so on. And I think this is maybe after Hoffman's realized it's been airborne, but we'll go back and talk about how they did that. There's a scene that shows a couple of cars inside the town who are trying to get out. They want to leave. They feel trapped, and they're Americans, so they want their freedom, right?
Absolutely. Live free or die.
So
hard.
We follow like two families in these two trucks. Because basically there's like this family in a truck, and they see like his buddy like turn around. He's like, "Hey, come follow us. We're going to try and find a way out." So we get this bit where there's like a military jeep chasing them throughout the town, and they finally like break through like a barn. And because it was like a barn, it wasn't like there wasn't like a guard on the other side. So they're out in a field. So they even bring in a military helicopter, and they say to them, "Look, we can't let you leave. Stop right now, or we will have to fire." And I think they do a decent job here, and this kind of ties into that scene you were talking about earlier with what was the guy who made the monologue? The president's
the chief of staff.
Chief of staff, thank you. It kind of ties into that, where I really genuinely felt that the pilots in this helicopter weren't being dicks and weren't trying to like throw their weight around. They were just being like, "Look, we cannot let you leave. We're giving you a warning," and then they fire in the ground in front of them, thinking, okay, that'll scare them. But then the front truck still keeps trying to move, and he's like, "Shit, we've got to do it." And like, so they shoot this front truck to shit, and that kind of scares the second family enough in the other truck to be like, let's put our hands up. That's not like they're taking this very seriously. What got to me about this is one, it was an excuse for an action scene, right? Because that's what it was.
Right, absolutely.
Two, I think in the context of having lived through the pandemic, made this a really weird scene to sit through, because all I could think was like, yeah, stop them. See, because all the people who didn't take the rules seriously when we were actually going through a pandemic, right, and not obeying quarantine rules, I was like, yeah, blow their truck up, right? Dangle their freedom in front of them and kill it with an axe.
Dude, I rented this off YouTube because it's the only way I had access to it. And the top comment on the YouTube version is, "This is how people made COVID out to look." Obviously meaning it of like, oh, it's so dangerous and deadly. So this person is obviously like, on the other side in terms of taking it seriously. But I'm just sitting there and I'm watching, I'm just like, that scene, that's like exactly the sort of thing where if they got out, if they made it to the tree line and made it out, everyone was dead.
Yeah.
Every single person in the world was dead. And the context is just missing for this commenter, where they can't put that together, where it's like, sure, COVID was not as deadly, but the whole point of it, like in terms of quarantining and stuff, was if everybody in the world comes down with it all at once, the hospitals will explode and nobody will get the care they need, and then everybody dies. Like, that's the context we were trying to avoid.
This needs to be contained, absolutely.
Yes.
And I was on the side of the authorities in this scene, and I'm almost never on the side of the authorities when I'm watching a movie, but I was on their damn side in this scene.
Yeah, and I also really liked the scene for the reasons you said, where it didn't feel like the military was just throwing its weight around for the sake of, like, we have orders, we just have to follow them. It definitely felt like that sort of balance, that fight between, okay, people have the right to freedom, people have the right to be able to, like, live their lives, but also you should care for the greater good of your fellow man. You should care about putting yourself out for the benefit of others.
There was that just one line, it cuts to the pilots, and there's one moment where it's clear the guys in the truck aren't going to, like, stop. And the pilot just goes, what the hell are they doing? Like, he's just genuinely in shock. Like, why aren't they backing down? Like, we're going to have to do something here if they don't. And we're trying to make that clear to them, and they're just not listening. So having, like, being frustrated with people not taking quarantine rules seriously and stuff like that made this a very interesting scene to watch. Even though it's kind of a dumb scene, like, not a single part of me sympathized with these two families, like, or at least the drivers, the ones who were, like, making this choice to be like, no, you're not impairing me, I have to get out of here, they can't keep me in here. It's like, because it also feels like these are the types of guys who are probably super, like, waving the flag around whenever chance they get, but the second
the guy riding shotgun pulled out a shotgun.
That's right, they start firing a gun at the military. Yeah.
No, they absolutely think that they could take on the entire American military.
Oh, and it's just like, oh, Jesus. I felt this scene in my vein, and I felt it in a way that I don't think I would have pre-COVID. I think in a post-COVID world, I was like, you know what, I'm taking satisfaction in your car getting blown up, quite frankly.
Yeah, that's the sort of thing, is I'm trying to think about how it was beforehand. I can imagine seeing this scene and thinking, like, oh, and this is the point where the military goes too far. This is the point where, like, we start to see that slippery slope of they blew up some civilians. But, like, post-COVID, I'm like, yeah, do it again.
Yeah.
Like, what do you, if anything, this just shows that your perimeter is a bit too lax.
Yeah.
Station some more guards. Keep going.
Actually, because that's the thing. The advice to all the people who insisted in being a crowd in the street was to go home and stay indoors away from everyone. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds familiar.
That's the other part that bothered me, is that the crowds are so upset that they're being kept in place and whatnot. And Dustin Hoffman even makes the line of later on saying, like, we have to get these people back into their homes. And Morgan Freeman's like, we already are. And he's like, bullshit. Like, I just drove through 100 of them just trying to get up to your front door. So clearly we're not doing enough. But that's the part that got me, was that this crowd is trying to get answers from the people in, like, the full hazmat suits. And they're just rubbing their hands all up on them. They're just getting right in their faces. And even without COVID, I feel like that's not a good thing to do to a person who just exited a clear,
I know.
dangerous area.
It's so stupid. So the sad part is, though, is that after COVID, I don't question, like, this feels realistic to me after COVID. Yep. Like, I don't question for a second that a bunch of people would just be angry and dumb enough to run up to people in hazmat suits who have just exited the hospital as if, like, hey, do you not think there might be, like, particles on their outfits that they're going to wash off with, like, disinfectant in a minute because where they were? This feels like a really dumb idea. So sure enough, most of the town gets sick, and we see, like, one mum have to leave her family to go to the treatment camp and then die.
I really appreciated that scene, because it finally felt to me like we were zeroing in on a character who didn't do anything wrong. We were getting, like, more of their life. We were trying to say, okay, let's follow them through the journey here. Let's follow them to see what it's like for people in this town. So that way we can associate as an audience more with what they're going through. But ultimately what we get is she's led into a field where they've got tents set up, and the next time we see her, she's dead. So they kind of just threw that away.
Yeah. I mean, they were going for the stark cut to her in a body bag. I get what they were doing. I mean, Contagion even did that. The difference is Contagion did it with a major character, which is why it was more
it's someone
shocking.
you got to know. That's what I'm saying. It's like this character, I wanted to get to know her more, so that way I would care more when I see them finally say, like, no, she didn't make it. But here it just feels like they almost started down that path and then decided, like, well, let's talk more about this monkey. What's this monkey up to?
We'll get back to Hoffman and all that in a minute. Let's just talk about the scene where the chief of staff talking to like the.
Well, hold on. Before we get too deep into it, I do want to go back to the airborne scene when they discover it's airborne.
No, we can go back to that. We can do all this stuff in the town later.
Okay, all right.
Because it's very separate. Because whatever point in the movie this takes place, it's maybe 2/3 in, something like that, maybe a little earlier. Is we get this scene where it's like, okay, this is the panel. Some of them are scientists. Donald Sutherland's in the room. In fact, we start the scene with him finishing his presentation where he's saying, "Hey, obviously, be sympathetic, but be sympathetic to everyone here, right?"
we are in the middle of the 90s, and because of the lack of major wars, I have not gotten to dropping enough nukes. So keep that in mind.
Oh no, it's not a nuke. It's just it's the biggest bomb they have that's not a nuke. It's the biggest they have that's not classified as a nuke.
Only because he couldn't justify dropping a nuke on Americans, but he would have.
Oh, he wanted to. He had the extra trigger finger. No, I actually did also. This is maybe the best scene in the movie, just because this chief of staff character, this guy that gives this speech, is that he's okay. We know what the general's thinking. He's talking about a clean sweep. That's what they call it, Operation Clean Sweep, which is dropping a bomb to just kill everything, and hopefully that just stops it's dead, right? It never spreads from there. Okay? Yep. But he stands up, he throws out photographs of like civilians that are dead from the town.
He pulls a Constitution out of his pocket.
He does.
Says, I got the U.S. Constitution here.
And he makes a speech, and he makes it very clear, look, if we're going to debate in this room and get to the conclusion, because the whole point is that while the president's flying back from wherever, by the time he gets here, we've got a recommendation for him. But I'm going to make this clear. We have to be unanimous. And know what? Like, I don't want someone writing to the press later saying they were the one lone voice that said, no, I don't want to do this. But when he says it, he doesn't say it as if, no, because we'll come and get you for making us look bad. He says it, no, I want that voice here now. I want the people who have got an argument against this to speak out now and give me a good reason why we shouldn't do it. Like, this is a last resort. And he makes that, he feels like the most human character in the whole goddamn movie, because he's taking the decision seriously and he doesn't want to just rush into it. It's almost kind of a shame that the next time we see Donald Sutherland, it seems like it's just been approved and it's like, oh, they just came to that conclusion. It almost feels like there's a more interesting debate I would have liked to have seen more of, perhaps, from that room.
Absolutely. Because as soon as they show that guy, he's so emotional. He's so in on it that I'm like, yes, you know what? You get my vote. You're the next president. I'm down. I'm down for it. I totally want whatever you want here.
Give me 12 angry men, but it's this. Instead of a jury, it's this decision. Give me 12 angry men in the room.
It's literally just a discussion of, you got like the military generals and all the people, but then you got the one lone guy who doesn't want to press the big red button. And then it's just, the movie is how that happens.
I mean, that's kind of Red Alert to an extent, but not quite. Like, it's not quite 12 Angry Men. But I just, there's definitely a lot of passion in this scene, and it felt like he was actually trying to be as humane about it as possible, and made it very clear that, we should not do this unless it is the only choice. And we have to be able to justify this. We have to have every goddamn scientist that's related to this field in the country who will back it up when they're asked by press. Like, everyone down the chain has to see that this is the only option. Otherwise, we do not do it.
Yeah. And I appreciate the fact that, I'm sure it's said somewhere in the line directly, but it's, the tone of it is much more of like, this isn't about optics. Like, this isn't about, oh, the president doesn't want to be remembered as the president who had to do this or whatever. Like, it is partially that, but majority-wise, it is just like, this is going to be a defining moment in our country that we kill over 2,500 people of American citizens that did nothing wrong for the sake of this. We need to be absolutely damn sure.
And I think that's the problem, is that the idea of making that decision and arguing for and against it is far more interesting than just, oh, we're running around because Donald Sutherland's going to drop a bomb, so we have to get an antibody in time to stop him. Like it just turns into such a generic thriller action movie chase after that. And it's just nowhere near as interesting from a ideology point of view or a debate point of view, or all these interesting ideas that you could have from that point on with just that key debate. Of course, that's not what the movie was ever going to be, because it's here to be a blockbuster, but right. it shows you a glimpse of it in that one scene, and then it's like, but we're not going to actually do that. We're instead just going to have it approved off camera, and now it's going to be about stopping the madman from pushing the button, right? Yeah. That's what it is. It's racing against time to stop him, and that's what the rest of the movie is. But yeah, so I want to get out of the way, because I feel like other than that, we can basically just stick with Dustin Hoffman's story now. That is just all him now, pretty much.
Pretty much. So yeah, just jumping back real quick to when they discover it's airborne. We're at the hospital, and they have all the patients quarantined off in a room, but like the vents and stuff are still active. So we get cut over to a different patient that Dustin Hoffman's brought to, and he also has the illness. So that's what teaches them, oh, it's airborne. They run some more tests on this stuff. And this is where I get, again, another scene that if they had kept this kind of style to it, I would have really enjoyed the movie, because it's essentially the Contagion scene where they talk about, okay, these people got it from this guy in a movie theater. The movie theater guy got it when the blood splattered on him. And because that pet shop guy also died, we can say that his blood was the one being tested and did it. So they managed to map it all back out to the pet shop guy. And then they also know about Jimbo out on the East Coast. But they can't piece together.
Patrick Dempsey. I don't think we've called them Jimbo once, so just Patrick Dempsey.
Patrick Dempsey, yeah. But they can't piece together what linked those two together. They had no idea what it was. And then, like, during this scene, they get the information that the pet shop owner did actually run a pet shop. They didn't know his occupation beforehand. So that's where they're like, okay, it's an animal. And like they're slowly piecing this together, just trying to get the full idea of the picture. And obviously, by the end of the movie, the thing they need to come to is the monkey, and where is the monkey now? Because wherever the monkey is, it has antibodies in it that they could use to generate a cure.
Yeah. I will say, I know that is probably based on some real science, but I did feel like the way this movie treated, like, if we find the monkey, it's got antibodies, and within like an hour, we'll have an antidote.
Oh, yeah.
That felt like a magic movie solution to all this.
There is no way that should be 1 hour. That should be at minimum 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah. It kind of felt like, oh no, this is the smoking gun, as it were. If we find that monkey, that's it. It's over. We've won. And
honest to God, they're just like one step shy of like, all right, we need to find the monkey, and everyone who's sick needs to eat part of the monkey. And that will cure them.
Oh, dear. No, I agree. I like them sort of try to problem solve that. It's such a small part of the movie, though, because it just kind of goes on to like, okay, now we're dealing with all the people that are piling up. We're dealing with the fact that some of the town. This is probably where we get that scene with the two guys in the trucks try to leave.
Yep.
It's all around this area. But then, of course, Morgan Freeman feels guilty, and he brings in the serum they had for the original strain, which does not work here, of course. But Dustin Hoffman, over the course of several scenes, kind of puts two and two together. It's like, wait, what is this? I've never heard of this stuff. And I read all the medical journals. What is this? Mm-hmm. And then he realizes later that there's two versions of the virus. And he's like, wait a minute. This serum's a cure for the other one. That means it's a specifically designed thing. It's not just a general... Because I think Morgan Freeman says it's a experimental something from Yale. But because it cures one of them, which is the one that the monkey had, like the second... When I say monkey, the second monkey, because in the pet shop... There was another monkey that ate
there
a
was a second monkey
that
also got sick.
Yeah, but with the original strain. So the monkey got better with the serum, and Dustin Hoffman's like, well, wait, that means it's specifically designed for this. That means they knew about this in some level, and puts a lot of stuff together and confronts Morgan Freeman.
And there's also like 4 different times in this movie that Dustin Hoffman confronts Morgan Freeman, and essentially every scene is the exact same, which is Dustin Hoffman saying like, you and I are best friends. You used to be one of the good guys, but now you're one of the brass. You're part of the system, man. And Morgan Freeman tells him, like, stop. You're also part of the system. You're also an officer. What are you doing? And Hoffman just flips him the bird and walks out. Not literally, but pretty much every time.
Dustin Hoffman's like, we're doctors, man. We took an oath. And then Morgan Freeman's like, yes, but we're also soldiers.
Yeah.
And that's basically the scenes.
Which, again, I would love for this movie to play with that idea of personal responsibility and like personal desire for like freedom and following orders and whatnot. Like, I would love to see them play with that, but because we so soon after this get to the fact of, oh no, there's just a dude running around wanting to drop the bombs. It completely throws all that out the window because both sides at that point come down on, well, if we just stop that guy, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether or not you want your personal freedom or you want to do for the better good.
Yeah.
If we stop that guy, everything's just fine.
Yeah, eventually. So just quickly here, I should probably mention two things. One, Kevin Spacey's suit rips when he's testing stuff, and he hides it from the others, but of course he gets sick. What's so funny about this is that they don't really give us any reason to dislike his character, but because he just happens to be played by Kevin Spacey, I was like, yeah, I'm okay with this.
Honest to God, yeah. Once, even without him doing it, like, I don't know if it was supposed to be sympathetic or not, but the sheer fact that this is a man who is on the front lines, he knows what this can do.
He's a scientist. He's a goddamn
scientist. And yet still, he decides to hide it. Still, he decides to be like, oh no, I ran out of the room super quick because I got the willies.
Yeah.
That's all.
And then Rene Russo gets possibly infected. It turns out she did get infected. She doesn't know for sure at first. But because when they're trying to syringe Kevin Spacey and he struggles at the wrong moment, she ends up jabbing herself with the needle and like it, breaks a seal in her glove and so on and so on. So
yeah.
She's now possibly got it. And at this point, they've found out, Hoffman's found out that they're going to bomb the town, so they're on a clock. But the key piece of information...
This is literally the point where it becomes an action movie.
Yeah.
Like, hard right.
And the key piece of information here is that they eventually find out, because someone from the CDC has been questioning this animal control warehouse intake at the docks, right? Where right at the start of the movie, Patrick Dempsey sort of smuggled the monkey out. And they question all the employees, and they get to the security guard that let him out. And because he finally confesses, oh yeah, he had an animal, I don't know what type of animal it was, immediately Dustin Hoffman's like, hey, Cuba, you can fly a helicopter, right? We're going on a mission. So, and this is the point where Donald Sutherland goes from being just an antagonist to mustache-twirling villain, because he says, if you find Dustin Hoffman, shoot him, he's infected. What? And of course, Morgan Freeman hears this and is like, wait a minute, excuse me, sir. He's not infected. You know this. He's like,
that's not right to me.
He's been hanging around with lots of infected people. You don't know he's not. Okay, fine. You're a bad guy. We'll just go with it. Fine.
No, like I'm okay with him saying that he might be infected and like ordering like hunt to kill, because obviously we just saw that they're willing to shoot random citizens in their trucks for trying to escape the quarantine, and he's just hijacked a helicopter. I'm fine with that if it weren't for the fact that the motivation is not to stop the virus. It is to make sure that he is unable to spread around the information that the virus either A, could be cured, or B, is already a pre-existing thing that the government knew about. It makes it's all about like the motivations here that change how the action is received. Yeah, and you're right. It makes him a mustache-twirling villain.
Again, yeah, if it was a sort of plausible thing where he thought, we don't know for sure that he's not infected, but they do know for sure that he's not infected because he's been in hazmat suits, he clearly is fine. But if it was a sort of thing where there was a reasonable doubt where he could be infected and they can't trust that he's not infected and they have to have that debate, that sounds like an interesting, like, what decision should we make? That's the drama. But, whatever. Anyway, so they basically hijack a helicopter and they fly to wherever, right? They found
like a records office or something.
They're trying to find out what boat this thing came on. And the guy at the desk won't help them until they mention, oh, we're from that town that's infected. Do you want me to cough on you? Yeah, get helping, buddy. So they basically threaten to infect someone.
I love that scene. I absolutely adore that scene because it's the first time that I feel like they actually managed to pull their weight here in terms of using their position, because the town, like we said, they were all rubbing right up on them. They were trying to like get in their face. All it takes is them standing at the front of the line here and like pushing the people in line aside. And the guy behind the desk is like, back of the line, sir, no matter who you are.
I liked his attitude, though, because Dustin Hoffman held up his card and said, I'm, Colonel whoever from the military, a military doctor. And then the guy behind the desk holds up his driving license and says, yeah, and I'm so-and-so. I work here.
I'm George from Santa Luis. What can I do?
And then there's another weird joke here, because the records lady like sits with them and they're looking through these itineraries and they basically spot a discrepancy and go, oh, that must be the boat, right? They figure it out, whatever. And they're like, oh, but that boat's out to sea. How do we find it? And this woman who's been helping them just turns and says, hey, I'm good friends with someone at the Coast Guard. I mean, I could just make a phone call. And Dustin Hoffman says, how good a friend? And she just sort of smiles and goes, more than his wife would like. I'm like, where did this joke come from?
It's the kind of joke that I would have liked any main character to have in order to give them any sort of personality. But sure, just
that's a good point. This character who barely has 2 lines of dialogue has more personality than most of the main cast. The chief of staff had way more passion and personality than a lot of the main. Why are all the
George
side
at
characters?
The front desk. Yeah.
George at the front desk. Why are all the minor characters the ones that have personality?
Because it's so much easier to just throw in a cute little one-liner for these characters than to actually, well, I say cute little one-liner, but no, they gave a whole damn monologue to the chief of staff. So
yeah, that was above and beyond. Yeah.
Yep.
So we get a scene where they fly out in the helicopter to where this boat is. And because there's no landing pad, because it's not that type of ship, right? There's no helicopter pad.
Yeah.
Cuba Gooding Jr. just sort of turns and says, okay, I'll get you low enough. And he's like, for what? So you can jump.
Yeah.
So he has to jump out of this lifeboat, and then we just get him looking around the ship, talking to the captain and being like, okay, where's this guy's bunk? Where's his lockers? Anyone else sick? Because this guy's dead. The guy that had the monkey's dead, like kind of in plastic wrap somewhere.
Well, he's coming in. He's just trying to get any information about the itinerary, like all the stuff there. But once he says doctor, they immediately show him the dead body, and he's like, oh, okay, this is probably more of what I wanted instead of having to search through the whole of everything else.
But luckily, the guy who had the monkey took a couple of selfies with the monkey, took a couple of Polaroids.
I'm calling that another contrivance.
In 1995, I'm definitely calling the fact that he had a Polaroid camera just hanging around and took photos of a part-time pet. Definitely seems a bit whatever. I mean, maybe he knew he was going to have to give it up, so he felt sentimental. I don't know. Still,
I don't care. Like, even the fact that he was taking pictures of the monkey to begin with, like, it just seems good. Because obviously, this is a thing that, like, they were bringing over. Okay? So even if this was something that he knew he was going to have to give up, like, does he do this with every monkey that he gets? Because this doesn't seem like it's the first time. It seems like this is a deal he had going with Patrick Dempsey for quite some time.
I mean, it felt like... I mean, that's true. You got a fair point there. This is probably not the first time he's done it. But I think it was something he was keeping secret from the crew, because it felt like he had it hidden, like a sort of, some lower deck area, and he was sneaking at a banana.
In which case, having pictures of it at all is stupid if you're trying to keep it hidden from the rest of the crew.
That is also true. But luckily, these Polaroids are above his bunk, where you'd put like a naked woman to masturbate to for some reason. This is an odd place for it.
We just learned a lot about this guy.
We learned a lot about him very quickly.
Yep. So we get a little interstitial cut here to a young girl out in the suburbs who's drawing pictures. And she's drawing pictures of a monkey. And the mom is like, what's that, sweetheart? And she's like, oh, that's Betsy the monkey. She lives out in the woods.
And to be fair, there was actually a quick shot earlier on before this as well, where she sees the monkey through the window. There was actually a little moment that showed that earlier.
Yeah.
But this is important because Dustin Hoffman has Cuba Gooding Jr. fly him to a TV news station, and they go on at gunpoint, right?
As the news is airing, like, wanted army criminals who are infected with this deadly virus.
So we get that scene where they hijack the news program, come into the studio, and Dustin Hoffman's like, okay, what camera do I look at? And he grabs like the tie clip mic, and he's like holding up a photo, like, this is patient zero, this is the monkey, have you seen this monkey? If you have, call this number at the CDC, it's very important, I'm not infected, they're lying to you. And luckily, the mum of this girl sees this broadcast. But I think one of the contrivances for me is that she never saw the monkey herself, which I would say would be enough for her to make this phone call. The fact that she looks up at her kid's drawing and assumes that her kid actually saw a monkey, because like she's like a 5-year-old. Like, just because she says she's seen a monkey, like, you're going to take that as a for sure thing.
Here's the thing. I think that because it's something that has only happened within, like, at most the past day or two,
okay,
she started talking to this monkey. Yeah. All of a sudden, her daughter's saying something about a monkey, and then the news segment saying, if there's a monkey loose, please call. It's like, okay, that's something to report. if this kid had been talking about like an imaginary monkey for upwards of a couple months to a year, I would fully expect the mom to blow it off and just be like, that can't possibly be the same thing.
It was just the cut from the photo on the TV to the child's drawing, which is just like a crane that's been, like squiggled like variously in the shape of a monkey. And I just thought, that's a funny cut. Like the mom's recognizing the monkey in the drawing. I'm like, it's a squiggle. What are you talking about? It's just a squiggle.
No. They also did a cut to showing the girl walking into the woods. I think they should have just stuck with that. Showing the drawing makes it seem much more implausible that it was ever going to be recognized that way.
So luckily, she's called into CDC. CDC has passed this back to them, and they go to the woman's house and talk to the girl. And he's like, "Hey, we won't hurt the monkey. Like, where's your friend? Where's your monkey Betsy? Like, where is she?"
Yep. There's also one tiny scene here that I don't need to spend time on, but I want to. Okay. It is, as the CDC is relaying the information back to Dustin Hoffman, the military intercepts it and gets the address.
Yes.
And that's where we get the one colonel or whatever who always gets chewed up on. He gives the information back to Donald Sutherland. Sutherland's like, "Wow, you finally did something right for once. I bet you won a promotion." He's like, "Yes, sir." He's like, "Well, screw you, man. You're never going to get it." And I'm literally paused right now on just his sad, mopey looking face as Donald Sutherland walks out of the room.
Oh yeah, that's important because of course after they get the monkey, this is where because they're on their way to the house as well, so that's where we're going to end up with our helicopter chase. But we get a whole scene here where the girl is in an operation. They've got a mission, right? It's capture the monkey, and she goes out with like an apple or something on a plate to try and lure the monkey out of the tree line. And Cuba Gooding Jr. is like behind a bush with like a tranquilizer gun, and I'm like, did you intentionally bring a tranq gun? Was that on the helicopter? Like, I do have a couple of questions, like how prepped they were for this.
Yeah. A tranq gun isn't something I would assume is standard issue on a military helicopter, but maybe.
I don't know. Maybe they had it in a case when they were walking to the helicopter because they were hoping to find an animal, so they brought a tranq gun. It's not that out of the realm of possibility, but it's still
possible. Intercut with all this is Morgan Freeman doing the final call, telling all the military, like, "Well, we're doing it. We're dropping the bomb. May God have mercy on our souls." And they all start taking off.
So they get the monkey, although not without some tension because the idiot little girl steps in front of the line of sight, and Cuba Gooding Jr.'s like, "Move, bitch, get out the way."
Here's the thing. Obviously, the monkey won't come to anybody else except for this girl calling her. Fine, whatever, I can accept that. But like, did they ever really establish the fact that the monkey is skittish in any way? Because it was clinging on to Jimbo. It felt like it was okay with people. I don't feel like why they all had to hide except for this young girl. Like, clearly the young girl had to call it, but they could have just been out in the open.
They were just being cautious. They don't know that. They don't know it's fine with other people. From their perspective, they don't know it's been fine with anyone else. But yeah,
I love the final shot though when Cuba Gooding Jr. shoots it. They do just like 3 frames, barely anything, of the monkey just like throwing its head up and going, "Ah!" and then they hard cut away
like a war movie. He's just been shot. He's like, "Ah!" Platoons.
Exactly.
Yeah. So they get in the helicopter. They've been told over the radio that the military's coming to get. And when I say military, it's Donald Sutherland in a helicopter with a pilot and then a second helicopter. So there's 2 military helicopters coming for them. And this is an extended chase sequence where Cuba Gooding Jr. is having to do evasive moves. He's having to trick them. They fire some missiles into the forest to try and trick them into thinking they've crashed at one point, and that's kind of towards the end. My favorite part of this, other than maybe the part where he goes like almost like a sort of noseward dive at one point, which scares the shit out of Dustin Hoffman, is after they've faked their crash, as it were. Radar showing that there's not a third helicopter anymore, so they think, oh, maybe they have crashed. And we find out how they're evading radar. It's basically just flying really low to the ground. But when you get this wide shot of how low he's flying, he's literally flying right above a truck. It's like a log truck. And he's just flying right above it. And I thought, you know what? I'm impressed only because I know you had to actually shoot that scene. Like, you actually had a helicopter pilot do that. And that's at least a little impressive. So fair enough.
Yeah. Nah, looks good. But no, I also like the nosedive scene because they're coming up on a bridge and Cuba's like, over or under, and he's like, I'm gonna leave that up to you. And then he starts nosediving. He's like, all right, I would have said over. I would have gone over the bridge.
Yeah, I think my problems with this scene as a whole, though, is that just in the middle of it, I just thought to myself, why in the hell is there a helicopter chase in this movie? That was point number one. Point number two is that Donald Sutherland's like saying over the comms before they start firing missiles and stuff, he's like, hey, no, you're coming with me to this base because you're under arrest, blah, blah. And Hoffman's trying to explain, no, we've got the host, we can get antibodies, we can cure it now, it's over. And Donald Sutherland's like, no, this is your orders, you're coming with me. And he says, F you. I just kind of felt like as the scene went on, Dustin Hoffman, again, it felt too lighthearted and comedic the way he was reacting to everything. As much as it was funny that he got scared when they did the nosedive bit.
Yeah.
It never felt like, oh no, he's pushed into this corner and it's inspiring that he's standing up against this bad general to like try and save people. Like, that should be something that we can really root for. But instead, he's so lighthearted about it, it just feels like such a movie thing that I just never really felt anything for that side of it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's probably because we get a much more of that sort of tone in like 10 minutes when he's doing the standoff against the bombers. But you're right. It is an issue where this is a serious sort of scene. There's a moment earlier on where he gets angry at Kevin Spacey's character, and they both just basically snap at each other that neither of them have slept in a reasonable amount of time. So they're both getting a bit more angry about it and a bit more upset about it. And immediately we get like an ironic cut to him just sleeping like a baby somewhere in one of the offices. And it just, the tone of the movie keeps having this strange whiplash between it's something really serious going on, like the chief of staff speech or that woman who had to like leave her family and then we see her die. Something serious going on. And then they counteract with like, oh, but the cute little girl has to get the monkey out of the woods. It's got a tone problem the whole way through that doesn't stop even right up to the end.
Absolutely. So they get back to town. The antibody thing gets going quite quickly to the point where he's literally giving it to his ex-wife who's dying, but her temperature starts getting better, and he starts running through the halls going, "It works! Cuba, it works!" I mean, obviously didn't say that exact line because he's
he does. It's a strange little continuity error.
No, Major Salt is Cuba Gooding Jr.'s character, and Dustin Hoffman's Sam Daniels, which I'm never going to say again because who cares? But but
also. Great. As much as he trusts the cure, as much as he like believes this is going to work, he goes right into his wife's room, and she is definitely sick, and she starts like going in and out a little bit, and so he decides, you know what, I want to be close to my wife, and he takes off his helmet, and he's now air to air with her. They're breathing the same air, and I get it. I understand from a movie perspective, he trusts the cure. He's definitely going to do this, but like...
No, David, I think you're looking at it a little bit wrong. It's not just that, because the whole point is that because she doesn't believe him. She thinks he's lying because he says, oh, we found the host. We're going to get the antibodies. We think you're going to be fine. And she says, oh, it's nice of you to say that to me. And he's like, no, I'm not lying. So part of him taking off the helmet, it's kind of about proving that he believes in saving her. Like, it's like, no, I'm not just telling you a story. This is me proving to you that I'm going to say it. Like, I'm not saying I love the fact that he takes his helmet off, but I do think, at least emotionally, I understand the reason for it in this scene. He's playing a gambit and saying, I don't care if I get sick now because I believe we've cured it. I believe it's going to happen. So it's more of an emotional, convincing thing than it is just he trusts it enough that he doesn't care anymore. I do think there's a more of an emotional reason to it.
All right, that's fair. I will fully admit that this scene went on long enough that I kind of checked out a little bit because I was just so done with it. But yeah, no, if looking back at it, yes, I think having that emotional moment of she doesn't believe him and then he does it, that does add a little bit more to it. But still, as a doctor, don't do that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Don't expose yourself knowingly to whatever's going on here.
Here's the thing. Around this point, I checked the time and there was still like 20-25 minutes left. And I went, what the hell is left? What's happening? And then Donald Sutherland just orders the bomb to drop again after Morgan Freeman's already called it off.
Okay, I want to focus on that for a second because that pissed me off from a pacing perspective. Morgan Freeman, after hearing Dustin Hoffman call in and say, like, we got the cure, we on our way, they call off the bomber.
Quite rightly. And then, right choice. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Absolutely. Good choice to make. Super solid. For Donald Sutherland to come back in and say, never mind, we're dropping the bomb again. Like, bombers, get back up in the air, continue your mission. That entire sequence is just stupid moot at this point. Like, I have no, obviously it's to show that Morgan Freeman is on the side of Dustin Hoffman and Donald Sutherland is beyond evil at this point because he's just ignoring a cure. But it's just, from a pacing standpoint, it's so worthless to have it called off in the first place. Just have him like try to run interference by doing anything else. Tell them that he didn't have the authority to call off the bombing in the first place.
I think I'd have been okay with it if it was used in the argument after the fact. Like, see, so the next scene that happens is that Dustin Hoffman and Cuba Gooding Jr. get back in the helicopter and they go up to basically just talk directly to the pilots flying the plane with the bomb to try and talk them out of it. Say, hey, disobey this order. Your general is giving you orders, and yes, the president authorized this, but he's not been given the new information, which would obviously change the order. So you're working under false like information, blah blah blah, right?
Yep.
When they're making their speech, and he's like doing the big speech, and I can see like the idea for this scene, and I like the concept of it. Is the idea you're appealing to their humanity, and the whole scene is that even though we're in the air, it's not an action scene, not really. It's, I mean, it gets a little action at the end, but like for the most part, it's about convincing these two men that this is the wrong thing to do, don't do it. And this is a great idea for a movie scene because I've seen it done in other movies. The entire plot of Crimson Tide is about whether or not we should launch the nukes, right? That's that movie in a submarine.
My favorite one is one of the Jack Ryan movies, Sum of All Fears, which, strangely enough, Morgan Freeman in almost the same role.
I've never seen it, but I'll take your word for it.
Yep.
Like, that's the point of the scene. And see if he'd said, look, why do you, like, because I'm presuming that the reason why the bomb was called off was never explained to everyone, because otherwise these two men would probably believe the story a lot quicker, right? That's kind of hinges on the idea that they didn't really know that there was a cure, right? Because, you know, obviously he's trying to explain that to them. Hey, we've got the antibodies. Everyone in that town within a few hours will have received a dosage and they will be fine. You're killing 2,000 plus people for no reason. Do not do this. And obviously a lot of this is Donald Sutherland trying to like talking over them and say, no, follow your orders, blah, 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 blah. Right? There's a lot of that. There's a lot of shoot them out the sky. The big moment, I guess, in the middle of it is that Morgan Freeman like gets on the comms to talk to the pilots, but intentionally sort of tells Dustin Hoffman how to stop them if they don't stand down. It's like, if you fly in the direct path, they can't, you know, they can't drop the bomb in the town if you're hovering over the town. Like, if you're in front of them.
But he specifically phrased it like, if you get in their way, they can't drop the bomb, and you will be arrested for that, so definitely don't do it.
I think my problem with that moment, though, is that Donald Sutherland grabs the radio out of his hand, and he says, are you an idiot? You just told him. And then he realizes that he did it intentionally. And I felt like Donald Sutherland was... I feel like he would have just got immediately that he was doing it intentionally. It didn't play for me that he was dumb enough that even for a second he thought that wasn't an intentional, like... hint.
I mean, I could understand. Again, it's the problem of why did Morgan Freeman call it off in the first place? Because if he felt like Morgan Freeman was on his side the whole time, I could get it. But the fact that he already called off the bombing once should immediately show you Donald Sutherland like, yeah, no, he's clearly not in it anymore. So it's just up to me.
The other big problem I have here is that at a certain point, Morgan Freeman just turns around and says, all right, pilots return to base, blah, blah, blah. I am relieving General Donald Sutherland. His name's actually Donald, funny enough. It's Donald McClintock.
Yeah, Donnie. He was a totally different name in the original script, but Donald Sutherland just could not be asked to memorize his new name. So, which
is weird because they just say General all the time. It's not like it mattered.
Yeah.
But he's like, I'm relieving the General of his duty for basically withholding information from the president and the chain of command to carry out this mission.
But that is only after they drop the bomb.
But the bomb's not dropped in the town. The pilot basically makes a choice to drop it over the water instead, so it doesn't harm anyone. And then he sort of says, the wind must have caught it, I guess.
Yeah, meanwhile, the other pilot's just like holding back a giggle. He's just sitting there like, hee.
And I'm like, okay, like surely if you could relieve him because specifically what he says is that he's withheld information from the president and the chain of command so that this mission could still carry out. That was no less true before the bomb was dropped. Morgan Freeman could have done this like at any point during this entire scene and didn't even decide to or think of doing it until this point at the end.
Well, it's only at the point where Donnie comes back and says, all right, well, you know what? We've got more bombs. Come back, refuel, and we're just going to do it again. So I feel like at a certain point, it was Morgan Freeman just kind of being like, all right, I can't interfere with this specific military operation because, like, it's already en route and the president approved of it, and I am a little bit concerned about my own image here. But once it gets to the refueling and, like, restocking sort of thing, he's like, nah, I could stop it now because this is technically a different thing going on.
Yeah, I don't buy that. I don't buy that.
No, neither do I. But that's my first thought as to why he only did it at that point.
Because his reason was already applicable, right? It was already applicable before the plane even took off the ground. Is that the president should have this new information to make a new choice based on how things have changed, and obviously any reasonable president. I mean, maybe certain presidents wouldn't make the right choice, but most of them should then make a different choice based on this new information. So. Yeah, at the end of the movie is Dustin Hoffman sitting by the bed as Rene Russo wakes up, and she's fine, she's better, and they basically compare like living through this virus to their marriage, and he says, "Would you do it again?" And she goes, "Well, now that I've got the antibodies," and they smile at each other. In the movie,
I would have divorced her again.
The movie fades to black. That's the ending.
Look, she's sick. She had a massive fever. She burned out a bunch of brain cells. If this is the best she can come up with as a final line, so be it. But like, that was a bad final line. That was a horror. The fact that again, we barely saw any of their marriage and like the problems they really had throughout this entire movie. So the fact that we decided to end on that. And then they try to make this ham-fisted metaphor as to like, well, it's actually kind of like living through a pandemic. Wouldn't you agree?
I think my problem is that, yeah, we never really got a sense of what the marriage was or why it fell apart, like what the friction was. There is one brief allusion in one of the early phone calls where she says it's not like him to look for the positive, like the optimistic outcome. He's always like doom and gloom and like thinking that the worst possible thing is going to happen. But to be honest, for someone in his job, that feels like a good quality, right?
I was going to say that whole sequence when he's talking to Morgan Freeman about like, we got to call out the National Guard. We got to get everybody aware of this. If I had a dude who like looked at the data and decided to not err on the side of caution, I'd want him fired because that's not what that job should be.
Yeah. So we never really get a good sense of the relationship. So it's very hard to care about them. On top of that, as I said way earlier, they have no chemistry. So the final moment of the movie hinging on this just feels like a big fat dud. Like, that's the problem, is that there's moral decisions that need to be made that are raised throughout this movie 2 or 3 times that are genuinely interesting sounding to sit and discuss and really just have the discussion more than anything else. But the movie wants to be a helicopter chase. It wants to be a race against the clock. It wants to be all these different things. And sadly, it never all fits together. Tonally, it's all over the place.
And honestly, if you want that moral implication and don't care about the action scenes, watch Contagion. It is exactly that. That's the movie you want to see.
So I cannot say that I like this movie all that much, and I wouldn't say that it's good either. Like I mean, I'm not saying I hated it. I'm not saying it didn't have moments or it like there wasn't some good ideas here or there. But as a whole, it didn't work for me. And I've got no nostalgia for this one. This was a fresh watch, so it just kind of it just landed with a bit of a thud.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's a few things that could have just been rearranged to really help things out. I think that if they had kept this little girl like talking to the monkey in the woods thing, but like sprinkled it throughout rather than just telling us it's happening 5 seconds before it actually pays off, that could have helped with the pacing there in the end bit. But like overall, it just needed a massive focus shift to get to be the movie that I wanted to see. And the fact that they could open on this idea of like, oh, there's a virus and like we're gonna have to quarantine the town and stuff, and they made it to helicopter chase, like, do another rewrite, guys. You're not quite there yet. I don't see why you would think this is an okay thing to do outside of they ended with the idea of we want a blockbuster, and they worked backwards from there. They started like just from that concept and then said, oh, well, viruses. Sure. Why not?
Yeah, this was directed by Wolfgang Petersen, who has done a few notable things. He did Das Boot, which is his most critically acclaimed thing. He also did Never Ending Story, which is obviously kind of loved and regarded. Later,
Poseidon, which is the remake of Poseidon Adventure.
fair, yeah. He also did Air Force One, which is pretty soon after this. But it was the very next movie he did, which is more just more a straight action movie, right? And so maybe fit. I wouldn't even say it fits skill because he did Das Boot, but it does feel like some of the things he's done some pretty generic blockbusters, like sprinkled in through some more notable stuff. And I think maybe it all comes down to maybe he's like Ridley Scott, where if you give him a good script, he'll go and make a visually compelling movie out of that script. But I don't think that the script here was good. That just fundamentally is what I think it comes down to. I mean, maybe a few other things too, but I think that's the main problem, is that the script just wasn't there.
Yeah, the script, and I would say some of the performances are just a little flat, but mostly the script.
Yeah. So yeah, very up and down as a career. And I like Das Boot and I like Neverending Story. Air Force One's a fun movie. It's not a great movie, but it's a fun movie. Yeah. Yeah. Never seen Poseidon. I'm sure we'll do it eventually, but
I mean, it sounds to me like it's just Poseidon Adventure again, and yet somehow only has a 33% on Rotten Tomatoes. So maybe not.
What dumb thing is it? David, I'm sorry, are you not familiar with remakes being shit? Because I feel like...
Oh, no. I do. But I'm just saying, like, clearly whatever made Poseidon Adventure work, this one did not recapture in the remake.
Yeah, it's probably full of CG. That's probably point number one.
That's true.
Yeah, so I think we're at that point then. David, would you like to rate Outbreak?
Yeah, I guess I will. So I don't know. I'm right around the middle area. And I'm just trying to decide whether or not I think it does break that 5 mark. It's definitely not going to make its way up to a 6, I'll tell you that much. But I think that in terms of Daylight being the last one, I think this one was like better made than Daylight. I think it had like a better, cinematic structure to it. I think it had a better, like, solid base.
I mean, to be fair, Daylight was directed by the guy who did Fast and the Furious, and this was directed by the guy who did Das Boot. So, yes. I mean, that kind of stands to reason a little bit.
But I will throw out that I think I enjoyed Daylight more. I think that there was more, like, corny funness, whereas this one, it doesn't get serious enough for me to view it on, like, an artistic level, but it doesn't get fun enough for me to just have a good time with it either. It's somewhere in the middle ground.
Daylight wasn't consistent enough with it, but it did have a couple of great so bad it's funny kind of moments. The car sneaking up behind the guy before it crushed him, that kind of thing.
Right.
Whereas this didn't have anything like that. This just had annoying Hollywood contrivances and like drama that didn't work very well.
Yeah. So all in all, I think because this number is a lot more representative of how I feel about it on like a technical level and not just personal enjoyment, I'm going to give it the flat 5, but like it's not budging from there in any meaningful way. Yeah,
I'm kind of in a similar place. It's definitely not going above a 5. I'm just like, does it go as low as going under a 5? And I'm not sure, because it's definitely in that kind of watchable enough mediocre Hollywood movie, right? With some good ideas, a couple of good scenes, a lot of bad contrivances and a lot of bad scenes, and just some overall things that don't work. The pacing and tones all over the place. The pacing in particular is that last like 20-30 minutes where I felt like the movie could have just wrapped up, but we had to have the final, like, oh, the threat's there again because the bad guy's doing stuff. Just felt like a tacked on extra 20 minutes. Tone was an even bigger problem though.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. I'm gonna go 4.5. I think it just nudges just under it, because I just think certain things, like Dustin Hoffman feels either miscast or he's just not directed enough to actually be playing a character. It doesn't feel consistent. I think all the problems I've outlined, I do feel like it goes under the 5 mark.
That's fine.
It's not.
No, again, that's where I was bouncing between. It's real tight.
It's not a complete flaming turd, but it's nothing that I'm going to recommend to anyone. So,
meanwhile, though, I think we can pretty much agree cut from the collection. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't make the cut. No.
Yeah.
Doesn't make the cut. So that is that. And next week we're on a boat once again for disaster movies, because we're going to be looking at the vote winner from Patreon when that is White Squall, which is directed by Ridley Scott, funnily enough. So we'll see how that is. I somehow had never heard of this, despite the fact that it's a Ridley Scott movie. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Well, that must mean it's one of the greats, Pete. That must mean it's real up there in terms of cultural identity.
Look, there's always a chance it's a hidden gem, okay? There's always a chance.
I'm just going to go ahead and pre-fill in my rating here as a 5.5, and then we'll see what happens when I watch the movie.
Oh god, I hope it's better than a 5.5. Like I'll just even take a nice sweet 6 out of 10 at this point.
Yep.
Come on, I need some good. I need some good in my life.
Yeah, we'll get Twister eventually.
So why do you assume that I'm positive on Twister?
I guess I have no reason. I just, culturally, it seems more significant to me than White Squall.
Cultural importance does not necessarily translate to quality, David.
True. Well,
assumptions like that will get you caught red-handed with jam on your fingers and up your butthole, okay?
Well, that's over on the other podcast we do, the Ace. I recently did homework for Blade Runner, which, culturally important, did not care for.
Also directed by Ridley Scott, funnily enough.
It seems like a pattern here.
He's very up and down as a director, I'll say that much. But yeah, so that's next week as we continue in the 80s disaster season. And of course, you can check out the Atomic Cinema Experiment that David just mentioned, where we do sci-fi movies. We've been doing some big stuff on that recently, like RoboCop, and Back to the Future, Furiosa, a lot of interesting things. A couple of classics mixed in as well. So go check out that. And of course, you can get bonus content and support the show and help keep it coming by going over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. We do monthly shows like the Criterion Cut, where we review movies from the Criterion Collection. So your arty-farty movies. And I say that lovingly, because I do love most of them.
Absolutely.
And then there's Extra Reels, which is the opposite of that, where we do things like Miami Connection and Hard Ticket to Hawaii, or possibly the works of Neil Breen.
Mostly the works of Neil Breen.
We've only done 2 Neil Breen movies so far.
Yeah, but I can see the schedule coming up. I see how many more there are.
Yes, the next one's very soon, actually.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there's a bonus summer Extra Reels, which is free for everyone. It might even be out by now, actually, depending on how things shake out. But yes, bonus summer Extra Reels will be available. So if you want to get a taste of that show, you can try out an episode that we're putting out. And if you like it, you can get more of it over on Patreon for $5 a month. And, you know, any support on Patreon or YouTube memberships or anything like that is what keeps the shows going and helps me be able to keep doing this. So thank you very much for anyone who does support everything. This has been the show. This has been Collector's Cut. We will see you next time. Keep watching movies. And if you can get... I'll try to think of what my outro line for this show was. It left my head.
If you can get it, get some antibodies.
If you can get it, get some... Surely there's a word that sounds like diplomatic that's some...
That's a pretty unique word, Pete. I'm not sure.
Autoimmune immunity.
Perfect.